You're listening to In the Balance, an Iowa Judicial Branch podcast. Welcome back. This month, to honor Veterans Day, I sat down with Judge Todd Deck and Judge Jeffrey Poulson to discuss their work in the District 3 Veteran Specialty Court. To hear more about how this specialty court got its start and the important work that it does, keep listening. Thank you, Judges Deck and Poulson, for taking the time to talk with me today. Before we get started, can you each tell us a bit about your path to the bench, starting with Judge Poulson?
Good afternoon. This is Jeff Poulson, District Court Judge in District 3B. I've been practicing law here in Sioux City since 1977. I was in the general practice of law for 34 years before joining the bench in 2010.
Great. And Judge Deck?
Yeah, my name is Todd Deck, and thanks for having us today. I am a district court judge also in District 3B. I've been practicing law starting in 2006, so approximately 4 years before Judge Poulson went on the bench, and 30 years. I was born and raised in Sioux City, Iowa. I went to law school in Louisville, Kentucky, and came back to practice with my father, and then was appointed to the bench in late 2017 and began serving in 2018.
Great. And now you both are working or have worked with the Veteran Specialty Court out of Woodbury County. How did this specialty court come about?
This is Judge Poulson. As I mentioned, I came onto the bench in 2010. So from the beginning of my judicial career, we had been at war in the wars against terrorism for 10 years. And increasingly over time in our criminal courts, we were seeing veterans who had disabilities that were obviously related to their service. I have a case I vividly remember, a veteran, a young man, was in the National Guard. He'd had a long, and I understand it was a fairly difficult deployment in Afghanistan. He came back. Had some anger issues, went to a local bar. Late at night, he got thrown out for fighting and walked down the street, breaking out a number of windows, which caused some felony criminal mischief charges to be filed. He was obviously dealing with some post-traumatic issues, and we really didn't have an appropriate venue to treat him in. I happened to have been the sentencing judge and put him on probation, but it was probation that left him without a lot of supervision. We had other examples. That's just one that sticks in my mind. I talked to our then Chief Judge Hoffmeyer about the idea of setting up a Veterans Treatment Court. He was supportive. Court administration helped me put together a number of informational meetings where we sent out notice to stakeholders. Lots of people came to the meetings, but we had a little trouble getting things off the ground. We initially thought that one of the key elements was funding, and so we tried a couple times, and I really thought the project was dead before arrival until one of the stakeholders, who at that time was a state public defender, saw an advertisement, and we obtained some grants that allowed for training. So some Department of Justice money allowed a group of us to go to Oklahoma, and we watched a Veterans Treatment Court down there in operation. The training helped us to define what a Veterans Treatment Court would look like. So when we came back, we had a meeting and basically put together a plan that very closely modeled our drug court. I think we started the Veterans Treatment Court sometime in early 2015.
Great. And Judge Deck, how did you become involved in the Veterans Court after it was established in 2015?
About a year and a half ago, Judge Poulson had approached me about perhaps sitting in on a few and considering taking over as the presiding judge for the treatment court. I did that and liked it and liked the program and the process. So I had agreed to take over for him as he was sort of slowing down, inching towards retirement. And so I've been the presiding judge since approximately that time, including our COVID issues and everything that's come with that. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but we've found a way to muddle through it and have kept the court going nonetheless.
Now, Iowa has over 47 different specialty courts. So what aspects of Veterans Court differs from those? What is unique about this court, apart from it being provided to veterans?
This is Judge Poulson. As I'd indicated, our Veterans Court basically took the drug court contract and just changed the wording a little bit. So in substance, it's very similar to other therapeutic courts. One big distinction is, even though our veterans may have substance abuse and mental health issues that are identical to non-veteran abusers or people with disabilities, they view themselves as different. They've had different experiences, and they don't see them as fitting into a typical drug court, even though their problems may be identical. There's a lot of camaraderie amongst the veterans when I was handling drug court, and one tool that we really found to be effective was people were quite proud of their service. And if we could connect with them with some aspects of military service, for example, we displayed the service flags in my courtroom. We said the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the Veterans Court session. We had a retired Navy captain call them front and center, and without anyone asking them to, they just automatically stood at parade rest and addressed the presiding officer, who was me, and I am not a veteran. But this was all a procedure that they recognized they could connect to, and it suddenly reminded them of a point in their life that they were proud of, and before some of these problems became overwhelming. And I felt like that was a real good tool that helped support them in getting the therapy or other treatment that they needed.
So how many cases does this court see every year, and how has it grown or changed since its inception?
So this is Judge Deck, and I do have some of that information in front of me. We have actually, since 2015, maintained a fairly constant number of participants. Generally, we have approximately 8 participants in the program. That has been up and down a little bit, but over the years from 2015 to 2021, we've had 47 participants in the program. We are currently down to 5 participants, but we've got some new applications, so we have some new individuals coming in. We also have had some graduations recently, so that is why our number is down to 5. But that's a good thing to have folks get through the program. You know, not everyone is successful with the program, but we're pretty proud of the success rate. I'm pretty proud of what we've done since I've taken over, and was very impressed with the success rate that was already there when I took over. We have approximately an 80% graduation rate, which I think is probably pretty significant and beneficial, or shows that the program is beneficial, considering I think that without that type of supervision, the success rate on probation for a lot of these folks would likely have been a much lower percentage.
So you've talked about how these are participants and applications and graduations. How does a case come before this court, or how is it transferred to the Veterans Specialty Court?
There's a number of ways that individuals end up in our program. We're always working on having different ways of recruiting folks to get into the program if it's something that would help them. Sometimes it comes through a suggestion by a prosecutor who might know that the defendant is a veteran, and that might come in the form of either a pretrial diversion of some type, where they might defer prosecution of the individual while they're in the program, and then if they're successful with the program, there may be some benefit for them at the end. Or it could be a term of their sentence. They may be sentenced to probation, and perhaps they receive probation when they otherwise may have received a prison sentence based on their history or the crime that they've committed. But they're placed on probation in order to complete our program, and with the added supervision that we have, they have that as a term of their probation, so they have to complete it in order to be successful with their probation. We have defense attorneys that refer clients to our program. We receive notifications from the county jail here when individuals are booked in as to their veteran status. And so if we have a list of individuals we know are in custody and have told the booking personnel that they are veterans, then we can reach out to their attorneys or to the prosecutor on their case in order to let them know what we have available and that they might be a good candidate to participate in the program. Judge Poulson, if you have anything to add, go ahead.
No, I think that's basically the same way it worked with me. I think people have the impression that this is somehow an easy out for a person who happens to be a veteran. I think quite the opposite is true. We have a panel that meets every Veterans Court, and if a participant is not participating in court-ordered treatment, we aren't shy. The first violation, we send people to jail for 24 hours, and then the second it goes to 48, and by the third, you're having a discussion with them as to whether or not they really want to be in our program. So I think it's only fair if there is a benefit to signing up. They've earned it because it's a very aggressive program. Most of the people we're in for a year to a year and a half, let's say. It's a lot easier probably just to take your hits on a criminal charge, be done with it. But if a participant has an interest and is serious about dealing with whatever underlying cause, I think it's very helpful. It's basically boils down to good parenting. When they do the right thing, you encourage them, and if they do the wrong thing, you punish them. And the punishment could be public service. It could be time in jail. Sometimes you even can create some unique punishments or rewards, but it's worthwhile, and you can see that it works over time.
Absolutely. And the goal of specialty courts is to provide that additional support and resources on top of those court judgments and interventions. What does that support look like for Veterans Court? What are some of those rewards?
So this is Judge Deck, and to piggyback a little bit on what Judge Poulson has already said, and to answer the question, we do have a panel of individuals. So in our Veterans Treatment Court, we have participation from different aspects of the legal and the veterans community. We have individuals that participate every session for administration, also from the Vet Center, which is sort of an offshoot of that and provides services to veterans. We have a prosecutor represented on our panel, as well as a public defender and our probation supervision officer who supervises all of our participants. We also have members of the local veterans community, and we have representatives from the Sioux City Police Department and our local county jail that all participate. And they provide us with a great range of services and options and just ideas even on how to deal with and to help the participants in the program. So I think that that support is something that the participants really enjoy. And what Judge Poulson had said about it being not being an easy out, I think that's very true. We have a very rigid sort of set of rules, and they're expected to be followed. I think, though, that's also part of what makes it successful with veterans is that's a big part of how they've been trained in their careers as soldiers and sailors to follow those types of rules and be in that sort of structured environment. And I think there's some familiarity that they have with that sort of environment that makes them conducive to being successful. But we even have individuals who otherwise, based on their crime, may have and probably would have received a relatively light sentence that wouldn't require much of them, who have chosen to go through our program, even knowing that it's going to be much more difficult and require more time and effort and have higher expectations of them than had they not gone through the program. So I think that the services that we're able to offer through all of those participants in our program, both the defendants that are participating and the individuals from the community, provide us with a good safety net for these folks and also a lot of options for how to get them to a good result.
Great. And do either of you have a case or success story that's come out of this court that has left a mark on you over the years or is really exemplary of what this court is able to achieve?
This is Judge Poulson. One case that resonates with me, veteran, had been in the Army for a long time, had some bad deployments, and came back with a lot of issues, and was discharged from the military, went to work as a security guard, and was charged with stealing things from the parking lot that he was supposed to be providing security for. He had a significant methamphetamine problem, and he said that initially it was just a way to deal with all the pain, and when he was using meth, he didn't feel anything at all. And that got completely out of hand, and he was charged and was really a fairly compliant participant. He did what he was supposed to do, went to treatment, stayed out of trouble, and when these participants graduate, I do an exit interview and just have them come in, and we just talk with them informally about their experience, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, things that they would recommend, and just have some give and take. And he said that if it hadn't been for the Veterans Treatment Court, he wouldn't have had the support he needed by peers to go through the program, and that he knew that if he didn't complete the program, his family was going to be gone. And that's the only way that they would stay with him, is if he would complete this program. And we got to talking a little deeper about that, and I asked him how many children and what age they were, and he had one that was an early teenager, and I said something about, well, those are challenging years, and he said, no, that's the easy one. The younger one was a special needs child with a lot of autism issues, and it just struck me that if this guy had gone to prison, he would have lost his family, and this special needs autistic child would have grown up without a father. So, that just shows the impact of what a little extra effort and a program like this can result in terms of changes of not only the veteran's life, but his family.
Absolutely. Judge Deck?
Yeah, I would just add another individual. When I took over, there was nothing significant about it at the time. The individual was participating and had a job and was working and participating in treatment, and was being successful at a nice apartment he was living in, and really was enjoying life and being successful with the things he wanted and the things that we wanted of him. He graduated shortly after I took over presiding over the program, and so I didn't kind of follow his journey throughout the whole period of time. But after he graduated, or shortly before perhaps, I heard a story from Judge Poulson about one of their participants who had started the program homeless and with untreated conditions that needed treatment, and no job, and just sort of in a pretty bad way, lack of self-esteem, things of that nature. Hearing about this individual from Judge Poulson, I didn't know who he was talking about until he got to the end and explained how far this person had come. And so this individual, who I had only seen as someone who was sort of had an easy go of it the last part of the program and did very well and seemed to do it without any difficulty at all, was actually someone who'd come in the short time he was in the program from being homeless to being having a home and a job and being happy and successful. So it was very interesting to learn, and a great, I think, along with Judge Poulson's story, just another example of how this can benefit people, especially since we kind of stick with them and stay on them and make sure that things stick.
Absolutely. Those are great examples. Thank you both for taking the time to speak with me today. And I appreciate all of your insight into this very important veteran specialty court. You've been listening to In the Balance, an Iowa Judicial Branch podcast hosted and produced by me, Marissa Gaal. If you would like more information about Iowa's courts, you can visit www.iowacourts.gov. You can also follow the Iowa Judicial Branch on Twitter and YouTube at Iowa Courts. This episode of In the Balance is now adjourned. Until next time.